Now, when I was a kid, I loved pirate movies. Did anybody else love pirate movies? I mean, I loved like the adventures and the mysterious maps and the traps. And of course, best of all, there's always hidden treasure, right? And there's all these movies like The Treasure Island and Blackbeard and the best pirate movie of all, uh, Goonies, right? And so just to note, what was acceptable for kids was different in the 80s. So, you know, just keep that in mind. But Goonies had it all, right? And it was a story of kids that didn't really belong. Right? They didn't belong, and they called themselves rejects. Right? Rejects. But then there's this housing development that threatens to buy up all of their homes, and so the Goonies, they're like, no, we want to live. We want to live here. And so they go on a quest to find pirate treasure. They want to find this ancient pirate treasure because they find this old map and they look. And on this search, they encounter bank robbers and deadly riddles and booby traps and hidden passageways. And finally, the treasure. Man, there's something about hidden treasure that's really appealing, right? Right? Something secret and hidden, but like through the perseverance of and ingenuity and luck, you overcome any number of obstacles in order to find it. Growing up, whenever I was on a walk or anything, I'd always be on the lookout for something unusual. Right? I'd always be looking. And even now when I go hiking, right, I always keep an eye out for forgotten treasures on the ground. I mean, my favorite pocket knife I found out on a hike 10 years ago, and I still talk about how cool it was, and I found this pocket knife. Because some of us, a lot of us, maybe even most of us, wish that there was something special just around the corner. Something special just around the corner. Something just around the corner that could change your life, to offer you an escape from this world and the circumstances that you're currently experiencing. Something in you that hopes for something better. Jesus knew about this internal longing, right? Jesus knew this internal longing, and so he used it to explain his kingdom, right? The kingdom of heaven. And so this morning, we're going to continue our series on the parables of Matthew chapter 13. Parables that are focused on explaining the kingdom of heaven to a people that have been suffering from religious abuse, right? From overly legalistic interpretations of the law. So the first week, we looked at the goodness, the abundance of the kingdom. And then the second week, we looked at the irrepressible nature of the kingdom. And this week, we're going to see how the kingdom of heaven is invaluable. Invaluable, right? It is priceless, priceless. So, let's get started with this first parable. And these are short parables. Matthew 13:44. The kingdom of heaven is like a treasure hidden in a field. And when a man found it, he hid it again. And then in his joy, he went and sold all that he had and bought that field. Now I just spoke about how exciting it is to find treasure, right? To find something expected. Um, and so it's always been exciting. Actually, back in those days, people actually really hid their valuables. They weren't banks, right? So if you wanted to keep something safe, you would hide it. You would hide it, and possibly, right? You'd bury it, right? You'd bury that treasure. So people would actually go looking for buried treasure. They'd be looking for treasure. It was an active pastime. They would look around to see if the land had been disturbed, for some sort of clue. And so when Jesus said that the man found it, he was probably speaking about someone hunting for treasure. Right? The treasure wasn't an accident. Finding the treasure wasn't an accident. He wasn't just stumbling upon it. It was the goal of a journey. It was the goal of this man's journey, was to find this treasure. And so the man knew that there was something out there, and he was determined to find it. He was going to find it. And we're that man looking for treasure, hunting, investigating, and just hoping that there's a sign, right? And that treasure that we long for, that we desire, is the kingdom of heaven, right? A place of no pain, because pain means something's wrong. And in the kingdom of heaven, everything is just as it was meant to be. Or where there's no sickness, there's only health, there's vitality and strength, right? Where there's no scarcity, right? Everybody has all they need for full and abundant lives. Where there's no loneliness, right? Where there's connection with the King above all kings and with the people of God. C.S. Lewis once wrote, "If we find ourselves with the desire that nothing in this world can satisfy, the most probable explanation is that we were made for another world." Right? If you have something in you that nothing else can satisfy, nothing in this world can satisfy, it means that you're longing for something that's not in this world, that you were made for something that wasn't here. We were made for this other world. We were made for the kingdom. You were made for the kingdom. That is our home. That is your home. And that's, if you're ever wondering, like, why do I feel the way I do? Why do I sometimes suffer? Why does my heart sometimes ache? Even in the best of times, like why am I sometimes still unsatisfied? Remember, it's because there is a longing in you for the fullness of the kingdom. Right? There's something in you that craves the wholeness of the kingdom. There is something inside of you that will not be content with anything of this world. Going back to the parable. When the man finds the treasure, he covers it up. He hides it again. Now, why does he do that? Because it's on somebody else's property. The treasure isn't his. He doesn't have a legal claim to it. But he knows that treasure is priceless. The treasure is priceless. It's worth more than anything else he has. That all that he has is nothing compared to the value of that treasure. And so in his joy, he's enthusiastic to do this. He sells everything he has. He gives up everything he owns, trying to scrape together enough money to buy the land, because what's on the land is more valuable than anything he had given up before. It's more valuable than anything he had. And so he has to give up everything. He has to sell everything to gain access to the treasure. He only uncovers the treasure after he had lost everything else in the world. That's what the kingdom of heaven is like. That is what the kingdom of heaven is like. That is what finding the kingdom of heaven is like. You see it, and you just desire it, and so you're joyful, and you shed all the things of this world so that you can move towards that. And then Jesus, he immediately just drops another parable. Boom! And this is Matthew 13, 45 and 46, the next two verses. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant looking for a fine pearl. And when he found one of great value, he went away and sold everything he had and bought it. Right? Like the man that found the treasure, the merchant is searching for something of value. And this time, it's a fine pearl. And he finds it. He finds that pearl, and he sells everything he has so he can have this pearl. Because the pearl is worth more than all of the riches, the other riches of the merchant, right? And just to be clear, I just want to explicitly say this. Jesus is saying, you don't have access to the kingdom. You don't get to have the kingdom as long as you are entangled in the kingdoms of this world, right? And this is something we constantly need to be reminded of, right? We constantly need to be reminded of it, especially here in America, right? Where everyone is their own king, where the individual is king, right? We believe in the rights of the individual. And I want to be clear, I'm proud to be an American. I'm grateful for my country, and I'm glad I can live in this democratic republic. But our form of government, it exists to serve. It exists to serve the people, right? It's the citizens that give shape to this country. But in a kingdom, the citizens are defined by their relationship to the king. Right? They're the people. So in a democracy, the people give shape to the country. In a kingdom, the king gives shape to the people. God gives shape to his kingdom. And sometimes in this life, we have to remember that as much as we love this country, our ultimate allegiance is to the King of Kings. And so we can be involved in politics, and we can choose our earthly leaders, but these leaders, this country, all the things of this earth are a pale imitation of our ultimate loyalty. And I know that in these polarizing times, we can argue about and fight about politics and elections, and those things do matter, right? Because politics matter, because politics are about people, and people matter to God. But we always need to be involved with these earthly things, knowing that we are ultimately working for something more. We're ultimately working for something more. And we're ultimately part of a greater kingdom. So we can't get caught up in the partisan battles of this kingdom. We can't do it. Because we have a calling to a higher kingdom. Now this conflict of separate loyalties isn't something new. This is something the ancient Israelites dealt with all the time. Right? They constantly had to be reminded of this as they dealt with their neighboring rival kingdoms right around them, as they were moving into the land. So they had to be reminded, like, wait, don't be of those other kingdoms. You're about my kingdom. This is Joshua 24, verses 15 through 17. But if serving the Lord seems undesirable to you, then choose for yourself this day whom you will serve. The gods of your ancestors served beyond the Euphrates, or the gods of the Amorites in whose land you are living. But as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord. And then the people answered, far be it from us to forsake the Lord to serve other gods. It is our Lord God himself who brought us and our parents out of Egypt, from that land of slavery, and performed those great signs before our eyes. He protected us on our entire journey among the nations through which we traveled. God is our God. And they're moving, they're being drawn, right? They were taken out of slavery, and they were being drawn to a place of freedom. But there were other gods there. And they had to be focused, like, no, don't be a part of those other kingdoms. Don't follow those gods, don't follow those lords. Be part of our God's kingdom. The God who rescued you, the God who saved you. They had to be reminded. And it was a constant temptation of theirs. They were constantly being tempted by this. And even, just like we're constantly being tempted by this, right? And even when, as they ultimately lived in exile, as Israel was exiled, taken captive to other lands, to serve other kings, right? They were taken captives to other lands, to serve other kings. They had to trust and remember their true loyalty. This is Daniel 17, 13 through 14. In my vision at night, I looked, and there before me was one like the Son of Man, coming with the clouds of heaven. And he approached the Ancient of Days and was led into his presence. And he was given authority, glory, and sovereign power. All nations and peoples of every language worshipped him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion that will not pass away, and his kingdom is one that will never be destroyed. Right? This is a message for us today. Right? So live for a higher kingdom. Not the kingdom that you're in. Now you seek the good for this kingdom, but you're living for another kingdom, for a higher kingdom. You're living for a higher king. Don't let yourself settle for the lords of this world. God is more valuable, more mighty, more satisfying than anything in this world. His kingdom is the treasure. His kingdom is the pearl that you're looking for. His kingdom is the pearl that you're looking for. And just like the Israelites in exile, it's easy to forget our true loyalties, right? And we get so caught up and entangled in the conflicts of the lords of this earth that we forget our true loyalty to the Lord of Lords. And we get so, because we're like, no, we can have it better. We can have more treasure here. Oh, we can have this more treasure. But they're all just trinkets. They're all just trinkets. We can have this much more power, but it's all dross. It's all dross. No. This isn't to say politics don't matter, because they do, right? Because politics is how we determine how to treat the immigrant and the foreign and the widow among us, how we deal with our most vulnerable population, how we make sure our children are healthy. Right? Those things are important. They're very, very important. But they're only important as as we move towards the kingdom, as we're working to enact the kingdom values in this earth. Right? It's easy to forget our true loyalties and to get seduced by the lords of this earth. Join in the fights of the lords of this earth. And we can get so seduced by the treasures, the accumulation of treasures in this world, that we miss out on the treasures in heaven. That we miss out. And lastly, Jesus gives us one last parable. And it kind of sounds odd, especially in relation to the other two parables. Treasure and pearls. But the more that you read it, you can see it kind of forms like a capstone, like a summary of those two parables. Once again, I'm telling you this. The kingdom of heaven is like a net that was let down into a lake, and it caught all kinds of fish. Right? It brought all kinds of fish. And when it was full, the fishermen pulled them up from the shore, and they sat down and collected the good fish in baskets. But they threw the bad fish away. Now that net catches all sorts of fish. It catches all sorts of fish. But only the good ones stay. Only the good ones are kept. The fisherman keeps the good fish. The other fish are worthless. They are thrown out. And what does that have to do with treasure and pearls? What does it have to do with treasures and pearls? How are they like again? Why does Jesus say once again? Once again. The whole point is to get into the basket. The whole point of the fish is to get in the basket. The purpose, that's the purpose of being a good fish, right? That's the purpose of being a good fish, right? To get into the basket. And all the rest is useless, right? In verse 50, it says that the bad fish are the wicked, and they're just thrown in a blazing furnace. The point of life, the point of your life, the point of my life, is to live. It's to live. And only the kingdom of God offers life. Everything else has the potential in it to become a distraction. And so Jesus is warning us. Like, what if that man that found the treasure, what's that man that found the treasure is like, oh man, this is really cool, but I don't know. I like my stuff. I don't know. I have these headphones. I really like these headphones. I have to give that away. What if the merchant that found the pearl decided, like, no, I don't know. I'll just take these cheap ones. I'll just take 10 of these cheap ones. They would have missed it. They would have missed on the wonderful treasure. They would have turned their backs on this invaluable, priceless treasure that was just waiting for them. They would have been bad fish. All bones, no meat, right? Bad fish. Only worth being thrown into the fire. In church, I'm concerned that we're too attached. That we're too attached to the things of this world. That we're too distracted. We need to remember Jesus' words in John 12:25. Anyone who loves their life will lose it, but anyone who hates their life in this world keeps it for eternal life. That's just the way it is. That's the way it is with everything, right? There's a very lengthy C.S. Lewis quote about this. Everything in this world works like once you kind of like give it up, right? You want to sound interesting to another person, stop thinking about how interesting you are and start focusing on what the other person's saying, right? Right? You lose yourself to find yourself. That's kind of the pattern. Now, today things are a little bit different than it was back then. Actually, throughout much of human history, life is harder than it is today, right? Food, shelter, clean drinking water, daily, that was a struggle. But in our modern world, in our country, it is easy to stay satisfied with our lives. Or even if we aren't satisfied, we can at least distract ourselves from the pain. We can at least distract ourselves. We can work, or we can drink, or we can do drugs, or we can watch television, or we can eat good food, right? We can exercise, right? Get those endorphins. We can spend time with friends. We can enjoy the beautiful nature, the beautiful creation. We can lose ourselves in sports, in good music, in books. We might not have that like priceless treasure, but we sure do have a lot of other stuff to keep us busy. And so we need to remember, you were not meant for this world. Don't settle for a cheap substitute. Don't settle for being distracted over being satisfied. God means for you to have so much more. The things of this earth are only a shadow of the fullness of the kingdom, right? And we're called, right? We're called to shed everything. To shed everything. To follow Christ in his kingdom. Right? We're the rich young man. Give it all away. I'm afraid that we forget this, or we don't remember this, or we over-spiritualize this. And this is one of the reasons why we're called to do things like fast. Right? That we talk about fasting, and I encourage us all to fast, right? Because fasting helps us remember only God satisfies, right? And fasting helps us to remember that only in God are there answers to the pains in our hearts, to our griefs over the things around us. Fasting reminds us of that everything is temporary. Even these things that we need to live. just temporary. The church, people, I'm asking you to say no to the kingdoms of this world. Say no. I will not follow you. And say yes to the kingdom of heaven, because you have been invited by the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, to put down the distractions of this world and to move further up and further into the kingdom of heaven. And the way to that kingdom is the cross. It's the cross, right? Jesus went there first. Jesus went to the cross first, giving up his very life, right? Breaking the power of death and making a way for us to join him in the kingdom. And only when we follow Jesus to the cross, giving up every claim in this world, laying down our rights in this world, dying to this world, we find our eternal reward with him. Please join me in this prayer. Disturb us, Lord, when we are too well pleased with ourselves, when our dreams have come true because we have dreamed too little, when we have arrived safely because we sailed too close to the shore. Disturb us, Lord, when the abundance of things we possess we have lost our thirst for the waters of life. Having fallen in love with life, we have ceased to dream of eternity. And in our efforts to build a new earth, we have allowed our vision of the new heaven to dim. Disturb us, O Lord, to dare more boldly, to venture on wider seas, where storms will show your mastery, where losing sight of land we shall find the stars. We ask you to push back the horizons of our hopes and to push into the future in strength, courage, hope, and love. Amen. I pray you're disturbed. I pray you're disturbed. But you find that courage, that you recognize that laying all this other stuff down is a joy, right? That's what the man said. In his joy, he sold everything. And he bought the land. He got the treasure. May you find the treasure your heart is looking for today. As always, feel free to call the church, respond to the email, or contact me if you have any questions. Myself, Christy, Pastor Vince, we'd love to help you with this. Because God has so much more in store for you. Please continue to join us in worship as we remember the cross. And then, because as we take the cup, the bread and the wine, we remember that Christ has so much more. That he has declared his love for us. And he has so much more in store for us. Please join us in worship.